Audacity to Lead, episode 26.
Inspiring actionable content that helps you get focused, get started, and be impactful. This is Audacity to Lead.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Audacity to Lead. This is the podcast where I give you the courage and necessary insight to step out and lead with more influence. My name is Dyer Samuel, and in this episode we are going to be talking about how you can connect podcasting and coaching, and you'll also see how you can start a podcast, how you can become a coach, and how you can work your way through getting more clients, free consultations, and discussions along the line of coaching and podcasting. Specifically in this episode, you'll learn how to merge podcasting and coaching and why it is important for you to have a platform for whatever it is you're called to do. And of course, I know you are a leader, and that is why you're listening to me right now. And so this episode is going to give you awesome value. Well, in the news, Audacity to Lead has been on hiatus. It wasn't deliberate in any way, in that the site was shut down by my host, and we were doing some domain transfers and all that, and the site was shut down. Even though I was busy with recording podcasts, there was no way I could publish it for you to get, and that's the reason why today I'm resuming the podcast, and that means from now henceforth you can get it every week, every Tuesday. And that's why I want to say thank you for tuning in this week, because if it had not been for people like you, we wouldn't have continued with this podcast this far. I wouldn't have been doing this. So I want to say thank you so much. The only story you might not want to hear right now is well, let me just use this as a point of apology. The audio quality as at the point of recording was, my side of the audio was not very good, but of course Mark's side was clear and clean, and I think you will enjoy that. So kindly pardon that as you go forward. Everything that we are going to discuss in this podcast today, you are going to find them all at audacitytolead.com/26. That is 2626. And that means after this conversation I'm going to have with Marc Mawhinney, the host of Natural Born Coaches podcast, I'm not going to come in and do any outro. So this is I'm not going to chime in at the end of this episode. Every single thing you're going to listen in here is going to be found at audacitytolead.com/26. I'm so glad to have Marc Mawhinney on the podcast, and I really want to appreciate Marc Mawhinney for being on this show today. So this will be where I'm going to let you in the conversation. Hi, Marc. Thank you for joining me on Audacity to Lead today.
Hi, Dale. Thanks for having me on.
Welcome. I'm so happy to have you today, and I'm glad you were joining me. For you listening to me right now, listening to us right now, Marc Mawhinney is a lifelong learner. He's a lifelong entrepreneur who began his coaching business after starting several other companies, including the one that he grew to 100 employees. His passion and specialty is in helping other coaches build successful businesses by defining their target markets, implementing systems to better manage their time and make more sales. He launched Natural Born Coaches podcast, a daily podcast where he interviews successful coaches to help support the worldwide coaching community. And Marc has grown that podcast. Within a single week of launch, the podcast hit iTunes New and Noteworthy. And Marc, who is here with me today, is on a mission to help coaches spread their message and value to as many people as possible. And that falls in line with what we do here on Audacity. Marc, I want to say thank you for joining me.
Yeah, well, no, I'm glad. Of course, you were a guest on my show before, Natural Born Coaches, so I'm glad to return the favor.
Thank you so much for being here. Now, a few things about you that we would like to know that I didn't mention just now while talking about you. So let us know a little about your background, how you got into coaching, and all of that.
Sure. Yeah. My background's in the real estate industry. I started in real estate at
Oh,
about 21 years of age and
interesting.
built up. Yeah, it's built up a successful business that way, and kept very busy throughout my 20s, working a lot of hours and putting a lot of effort into it. And things went well, and built up a large company from those efforts. Now, unfortunately, I went through a business closure about almost 6 years ago, and it was from going through that business closure and other difficulties that I said I want to go on a new path in my life. I said, I'm done with real estate, not having fun with it. And I think I could have a lot more fun with something else. And the reason I chose coaching was I was helped back to my feet by several coaches and mentors who were really important in my life. And I thought, wow, I would love to do the same thing and help other people the same way that they helped me. So I'd always been interested in personal development ever since as a teenager, reading all the books like Think and Grow Rich and all those great books. But I then took it to another level and started coaching people after that. So very happy. I love coaching. It's a great industry to be in, and having a lot of fun.
Awesome. Glad to hear that. So when you were in real estate, was it like you really did not have so much passion for real estate or what?
I enjoyed real estate, but it wasn't like I had a lot of passion for looking at houses and looking at different kitchens and ways that homes were decorated or anything like that. So I enjoyed real estate, but I enjoyed the actual building of a business from real estate. And I had a good time in all the years of doing it. But the interesting thing is, it showed me what I didn't want in my life going forward. And what I didn't want is to have a phone attached to my ear for 18 hours a day and be working 100 hours a week and never be able to get away on vacation because you have to stay close to your home market. And the thing I love with coaching is you can do that literally from anywhere as long as you have your laptop and you have a good internet connection. And I find that there's a lot more flexibility than what I had in my previous life in real estate.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. Good. Recently, anyway, congratulations on your new course on Udemy. That is how to become a coach and earn a living doing what you love. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
Now, in your course, you mentioned quite a few things. Would you mind walking us through a step-by-step system to become a coach and earn a living doing what you love?
Yeah, the course is interesting. Why I created the course was I was getting a lot of the same questions from clients. So when it came to coaching, a lot of them wondered, okay, what exactly, how do you become a coach? And more important is, how do you become a successful coach and actually make a living doing it? And I was getting these same 20 questions, and there's probably even more than that, but the main 20 that I was getting hit with every time. And I decided to partner with someone that I know, and I've done some business with, Alex Ganadnik, and he's a Udemy pro, and he helped out with it and partnered on it. And he basically interviews me throughout that program. It's about an hour and a half, 2 hour long video program. So we go through everything. We go through basically talking about how people can make the jump from one industry into coaching. So if they're in a 9-to-5 job, how they can become a coach, knowing their motivation, which is very important. If you're a coach, I've always said it's got to be about more than just money, although money's an important part of it. But how coaches can stay motivated, basically how coaches can choose a niche and a target client that they can target, and all those things. Doing your business on the internet. How do you handle your marketing? How much do you charge? That's important as well. A lot of coaches don't know the pricing, the right way to do it. So there's just a number of things that are covered in there that are crammed into that hour and a half, 2 hours.
Wow, awesome. Now, I would like you to get into a little more detail about how you can use technology for coaching, because that's one of the things you mentioned in the course.
Right. Yeah. Now, do you mean in terms of actually coaching people, or do you mean getting clients, like marketing?
Well, I think we can cover the two of them. We can look at
Sure.
marketing first, then working
Yeah.
with people next.
Yeah, I mean, technology is huge. I wouldn't have a coaching business without technology because I'm on the East Coast of Canada and I have very few local clients. I have a handful of clients that I say are local, but they're a couple hour drive away from where I'm at. So they're not really local. Most of my clients are in the United States, and I'm starting to get people from around the world and all over. So without technology, I couldn't do this business, not the way that I'm doing it currently. And I'm using Skype a lot. I'm on Skype daily, a lot of coaching calls. I'm using things like Dropbox to get files to clients. We're just using all sorts of different things in technology to make things go more smoothly. You know, we're using a lot of Google sharing features and so on. So that would be the first thing. In terms of the marketing, it helps us actually get my name out there. You know what it's like when you're running a podcast. If you can expose it to people all around the world, then it's going to grow that much more quickly. And we've had a lot of listeners. I don't know if we've had a lot in Africa or where you're at, but we've had a lot in the UK and Australia. And so there's been people elsewhere other than North America. So technology has been huge just to get the message out there and to reach people that I would have no way of reaching had we not had it.
Awesome. Technology has been a big tool, actually. If not for technology, I wouldn't have met you. And it's one of the blessings of this present time. So, in your course, you talked about strategies to dig down and find your niche. And it's also one of the mission you have. It's even one of the basic mission you have to help coaches find their target markets. Now, let's talk a little about that. Can you share with us how to dig down and find your niche?
Sure. Yeah, I'm a really big fan of finding your niche. And the reason why I'm such a fan of it is just from talking to successful coaches every day on Natural Born Coaches, I'm always asking them either on air or off air, what's the biggest mistake that coaches make? And the overwhelming majority and the most popular answer is they don't choose a niche. So I've heard that from so many people, and I've experienced it with my own coaching business as well. I didn't choose a niche coming out of the gate. When I started as a coach, I said, I'll be a business coach and I'll work with any entrepreneur that's out there, and thinking that was the right strategy, and it wasn't. And it was difficult to get traction. And I realized quite early on that I'd have to tighten that target client up and choose a niche. So to answer your question, how do you find your niche? I mean, the first thing you have to do is you have to look and do a bit of research. You know, what potential niches first of all are out there. I've done a report up with 100 potential niches, and you would think, oh, there's no way there's 100 potential niches out there, and I can tell you there's way more than that. Those are the first 100 that I came up with that would work, but there's so many more niches. I recently had a guest on the podcast who he was an executive coach, but there's so many executive coaches. He's in the United States, that he was just bumping into everyone else and he couldn't get enough clients. And what he decided to do is he decided his niche would be he would coach the wives of successful executives who were feeling like they were in the shadows and they had neglected their dreams while they were supporting their husbands. And now that's his niche. He works specifically with the wives of successful executives, and he's doing very well that way. Well, he came up with that niche because he's always gotten along well with women, and it was something that it just gelled right with him, and he chose that niche. So when you choose a niche, you want to pick something that you're going to enjoy, and don't be too worried that you're going to have to stay stuck in that niche for the rest of your life. It's just something that you get into that niche, get some traction, get those revenues in, make a name for yourself. And then as time goes on, you can expand out. You know, a perfect example is, Gary Vaynerchuk, who's huge in the whole internet marketing, social media type world. He started doing online videos for wine reviews and with online Wine Library TV, where he basically took his parents' wine business and started shooting videos about wine on the internet. Now, it's not like he was stuck in that niche forever. He did very well with it for, 5 years. And then he used that to expand out when he wrote Crush It and other books that spoke to a more general audience about social media. But had he not started in that tight niche, he would have never gained the traction that would have allowed him to have the success that he had later on in his life.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. I love the example you gave of Gary Vaynerchuk. I really love that because when he started, it was like he inherited a business and the business wasn't having that much of exposure, and he brought technology into it to bring exposure to the market, to the business. He brought it in a way to market the business in a far better way than his parents had been doing, and that was how he was able to build a niche for himself, and I really connect with that. Now, there's something that you do very well, and it is helping coaches to spread their message. Am I right?
Yes. That's definitely a passion of mine.
Yeah. So now, one thing I know is when you are trying to spread your message, of course, you have to have a platform to spread your message. I want to find out, in what way has podcasting help you to spread your message?
Yeah, I mean, you're so right that you have to have a platform. And the challenge nowadays, it's not that there's no platform to choose. The problem is there's too many options. You could get a little bit overwhelmed, as you know. You've got YouTube, you've got some people choose blogging, you've got various social media channels, and of course, podcasting. And I think for me, I had to choose one of them rather than just being okay at a number of them and being so-so. I decided I'm going to really focus on one and pour a lot of time and energy into it. And I chose podcasting. And podcasting is huge for a couple of reasons. First, I find that the barrier to entry is a little bit higher than a blog. A blog, anyone could start within 2 minutes. You go and grab a free WordPress blog and you're blogging. And I know it's a lot of work to keep it going, but you can start one relatively easily. A podcast is a little bit more work to it. You have to have some equipment, although not a lot, and there's more effort. You have to coordinate. If you have guests on your show, you've got to do some editing. And by having that bar raised a little, it's a little bit harder for some people to get into it. There's a little less competition, although there are a lot of podcasts coming online. The reason I like podcasting is it's almost instant credibility. So when you start podcasting, your voice is in people's brains every day or weekly, and they're getting to know you. So I'm sure you've found that, Deo, with your show. People who listen to it consistently feel like they know you, and it's interesting. So it gives you that credibility right off the hop that you can approach a potential client. They know that Deo has a great podcast, and right away you're seen as being elevated in their eyes, as opposed to if you just approach them cold and they didn't know who the heck you were. So besides that credibility, I mean, it's a way to get your message out there. You're basically putting out all this valuable content that's free content, but you're putting it out there with the hopes that you're attracting potential clients, people who will buy your services, products, etc.
Now, talking about potential clients, you mentioned potential clients, and that brought to mind the issue of free consultation and how that helps you make more sales. Can you shed more light on that, please?
Yeah, I've changed my opinion when it comes to free consultations. When I started as a coach, I used to do a ton of them. And not saying that you shouldn't do a lot of them. It's great practice. You get the experience, you hone your skills, but you can also waste a lot of time with people who aren't really qualified to buy your service. So I've changed as time's gone on. Now when I say a complimentary session. It sounds a little bit better than free, because I find people don't really value free, even if it's the best thing in the world. If they're getting it for free, then they're not fully invested in it. They just don't value it. So what I've started doing, I'll usually send a really short questionnaire to them before we speak. If they want to talk to me, I'll say, great, with me, and I know that they're in my right market. I'll say, great, here, can you do me a favor, fill this out? I just want to know a little bit more about you before we connect. If they're not willing to fill that out, then that's telling me that they're not serious. And then I move on, because there's lots of other potential clients there as well. So where I think that they're free, I would recommend that people pre-qualify to make sure that it's a right fit for the people who are coming on the phone or on Skype with you. And I would also keep them short. Don't have these 2-hour consultations where you're giving away the farm and throwing everything at them. Keep them, 15 to 30 minutes is enough time to get a sense if you can help them, if it's the right fit. You give them a few things that they can go and will give them value and that they can implement into their lives. But it really shouldn't, I don't believe it should be a full-fledged coaching session where you're putting everything out there like you would for a paying client.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, if someone, let's say my listener right now, wants to be a coach and wants to incorporate podcast into it, what steps can you give the person so that you can incorporate coaching and podcast?
Well, it's interesting with podcasts. It's a lot of the same rules as when you become a coach. And we talked earlier about niching. Make sure that you have the right niche and the right focus with your podcast. So if your podcast is changing its message every day, then people are going to be confused and it's just not going to get the traction. A couple other tips with the podcast, which are huge. I recommend being, first of all, being consistent. So have the same day and time that it's being released every week. So I wouldn't recommend that you start off with a daily show like I'm doing 7 days a week. That's a lot to bite off, and it could be a little overwhelming. So maybe you start with 1 day a week, or you start with 2 days a week, and you can move up as you get more comfortable with the process. But the biggest key is make sure that you always have the same frequency every single week. So I see a lot of podcasts out there that will put out in the early stages 3-4 shows a week. And then suddenly it goes quiet for a little bit. Maybe they'll release 1 show 1 week, 2 the next, 0 the next. Then they're back up to 4, and they're all over the place. And listeners don't know when to expect a show. So it's very important that you keep that consistency going so that listeners know what to expect with the show. And that would be the first step. Well, I guess the second, if you also factor in making sure that you keep your messaging consistent and make sure you have a good message to go out there with. And the other suggestion I'd recommend is get help, because podcasting is not difficult. It's not rocket science, but there is a lot of information out there on the internet, and some of it's good and some of it's bad. And I've always said that it's a little bit like drinking water from a fire hose. There's almost too much information. So when I got started as a podcaster, I joined, as you know, Podcasters Paradise. That was a group that I joined, John Lee Dumas. Yep. And that was a huge group for me. That was very helpful. There's something like 1,600 people in there now. I've now, with my business, just launched, started my own group, and with a similar concept to help people, although on a smaller scale, with a mastermind and help people bounce ideas off each other and basically learn exactly how I've grown the podcast the way that I have. So if you want to know any more information about that, check out naturalborncoaches.com.
Awesome. I was even going to ask you to tell people where to find you, but of course we'll get to that. Now, you mentioned something, and you said that if you are going online, you should clarify your message. Now, that's something that I also try to get people to understand, that so there's no way you can get online and then you keep changing your message. Now, if I'm going to ask, how can somebody find that message?
Well, the big thing I believe is to find a problem that's in the marketplace and then create a solution for it. And there's nothing wrong with asking the marketplace, hey, what do you need help with? So that's what I recommend to some coaches I work with, because they're my clients or coaches. And if they have no clue what they want to do out there, what their message is going to be, I tell them there's no harm in putting something out there on your social media, basically saying, I'm looking to create a program, and I'd love your feedback. What's the number one problem that's facing you, or what would you like help with? Maybe give them a few solutions. Which one resonates with you? And a lot of coaches and entrepreneurs in general are afraid to do that because we feel like it makes it look like we don't know anything, and it makes us we feel a little vulnerable. And I think that that's a very good way to do market research, is you find out what the market wants, and then you can create your message crafted around that. And that's a very powerful tool. I think if more coaches, more entrepreneurs did that, then we'd have a much higher success rate.
Wow, awesome. Thank you so much for the value you have shared, for the value you've given to Audacity to Lead community and to our listener right now. Let's say our listener wants to reach out to you, where can they find you?
Well, like I mentioned, naturalborncoaches.com is the best place. I'm all over social media. So I'm big on Twitter, Facebook, all the usual, LinkedIn. So please reach out. Love connecting with people who listen to my podcast. Or I've also connected with some really cool people when I've been a guest on shows like yours that have reached out and have gotten value from it. So I'd love to connect with you.
Yeah, definitely. Somebody will be reaching out to you from Nigeria soon. And that makes a new connection. Thank you so much.
I'll have to plan a vacation to Nigeria.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yes.
I'll be glad to have you around.
I think you just had an election there recently, didn't you? I saw on your Facebook.
Yeah. Awesome. I'll be glad to have you. Definitely. I'll be glad to have you and to see you physically. So thank you so much for being on Audacity to Lead today, Marc. And thank you for the value you shared. It's good
well, thanks for having me, Deo.
You.
Yeah. And keep doing what you're doing. I love the concept.
Thank you so much.